All right, let's talk about SQL. If you've ever found yourself looking at a massive spreadsheet, just wishing you could ask it a simple question, then you are in exactly the right place. We are going to demystify the one language that lets you talk directly to data.
I mean, think about it. We are swimming in data. Every single click, every purchase, every little interaction we have online, it all creates information.
But here's the thing. Raw data is mostly just noise. The real magic, the real value, is figuring out how to ask the right questions to find the actual answers hidden inside all of that chaos. So, how do we do that?
Well, it turns out there's a special language for it, and it's a big deal. According to this huge survey from Stack Overflow in 2023, SQL is the third most popular technology out there for pros. It's not just for software engineers. It's a must-have skill for pretty much anyone who wants to work with data.
Okay, so before we can start asking our data all these brilliant questions, we first have to understand, where it lives, because the way data is stored completely changes how we can talk to it.
On one hand, you've got spreadsheets. We all know them. They're super flexible, right? Anyone can jump in, add a random column, mess up the formatting, and pretty soon you've got total chaos. But on the other hand, you have databases. Think of them as the super organized, neat freak of the data world, where everything has its proper place.
And that is exactly where SQL comes in. SQL, or Structured Query Language, is the universal language we use to have a conversation with those super organized databases. It's how we ask for exactly what we need in a way the database perfectly understands.
So in SQL, a question is called a query. And just like any good question, a query has a really clear structure. Let's break down the three most important parts.
Okay, imagine your database is a giant library. The from clause is the very first thing you say. It's you telling the librarian which section to head to. Hey, I need something from the fantasy characters section. That's it. It just points to where the data is.
Next up is where. So, the librarian is in the right section. Now you get more specific. You say, but I only want the characters who are still alive. See? Where is your filter? It immediately narrows down the search and gets rid of all the stuff you don't need. And finally, select. The librarian has found the exact characters that meet your criteria, so what information do you actually want to know about them? Select is you saying, okay, from those specific characters, just tell me their name and their level. You're picking the exact columns you want to see.
And here's how it all looks together. It's beautiful, right? Select the name and level from the characters table where the character is alive. It's a perfect, precise question that the database can go and answer instantly.
Okay, you're going to want to pay close attention to this next part, because this is the single most important concept for anybody starting out with SQL. If you get this one thing, you are going to save yourself hours of headaches. It's all about learning to think like the database.
So what is that one thing? What's the number one trap that pretty much everybody falls into when they first start writing SQL?
It's this right here. The biggest mistake is assuming that the order you write the code is the order the database actually runs it. It's not. Our human way of writing is totally different from the machine's logical order of operations.
And you can see the difference so clearly here. We write select, then from, then where. It makes sense to us. But the database, it actually processes from first, then where, and select is the very last thing it even looks at.
Let's walk through what's happening inside the computer's brain. First, it sees from and grabs the entire table you asked for, throws it onto a virtual workbench. Second, it processes the where clause and goes through that table row by row, tossing out everything that doesn't match your filter. And only then, as the very last step, it finally looks at your select clause to pick out the columns you wanted to see from whatever's left over.
This leads us to the golden rule. Any step in the process can only see the data that was made available by the steps that logically happened before it. It has no idea what's coming next in the process.
And that right there explains the most common error in all of SQL. You get clever and create a new column in your select statement, maybe you do some math, and then you try to filter on that new column in your where clause. And error, it fails. Why? Because the where clause runs before the select clause. So as far as where is concerned, that new column you just invented doesn't exist yet.
Now that we get the logic, let's look at where the real power of SQL comes from. It's not just about pulling out lists of things, it's about creating brand new summaries and insights that didn't exist before. And we do this using aggregations.
These are just special functions that can take a whole bunch of values, maybe thousands or even millions of rows, and compress them down into a single really useful number, like the sum of everything, the average, or just a count.
So here's our raw data again, a list of individual characters. It's fine, but what if we wanted to know which character class is the most powerful on average? We'd have to pull out a calculator and do it all by hand.
But with SQL, this is where the magic happens. We can use a group by clause. We tell SQL, hey, group all the mages together, all the warriors together, and so on. And for each of those little groups, calculate the average level. And just like that, we've turned a long, boring list into a super powerful summary.
And that's really the whole point. Learning SQL isn't really about memorizing code. It's about learning a new way to think, a structured, logical way to have a direct conversation with your data.
So now you've got the fundamental building blocks. You understand the language. You know how the database thinks. The only real question left is, what are you going to ask it first?